Hey YouTube, this is Nina. We're going to pick up in chapter 7. Sorry that it's so late. I had a full day and I stayed up until my sleepiness passed. I'm watching my brother's videos and now I'm going to go ahead and do my reading. Hope everybody had a good day. Chapter 7 is the day after the flight. The last chapter, they were escaping. So things are getting good. Now we left our friends, the fugitive Israelites, in their subterranean chambers, preparing to rest where we will leave them for the present. And now with returning dawn, hasten back to Nineveh to notice the effect of the events narrated in our last chapter. Upon the inhabitants of the royal city, the sun had risen in his usual splendor, and the streets of Nineveh began to show signs of returning animation. But in the bustling throng, there seemed something wanting. Here and there one encountered close-up stalls and other places of business, while many a wandering glance seemed to inquire why certain labors, which evidently were assigned to a poorer and more despised class of menials, were not being performed. In the king's household, all was utter perplexity. The various cooks and servants stood idling around their several offices, not knowing what to do. The hour at which the monarch would arise and take his morning meal drew near or nigh, while several of the higher officers passed and repassed the kitchen door, sending long glances at the glowing hearths and loudly grumbling about their breakfast not being served. But no appetizing flavor of roast or stew emerged from the kitchen, and it appeared as if the day was devoted to a total abstinence from animal food. More than a dozen messengers had been sent to the head steward's room for orders, but they had found the door locked and had been unable to make themselves heard by the supposed sleeper. And as Hiram was known to be an especial favorite of the king and his daughter, all were afraid to provoke his anger by louder demonstrations. But deep and bitter were the curses muttered against the steward and the favor in which he stood with his royal master and mistress. At length the king sent for his chamberlain, and now they could wait no longer. Once more they knocked loudly at the closed door, and then, not receiving any answer, they burst it open, when lo, the room was found to be empty and showing unmistakable signs of not having been occupied all night. Great now became the consternation and excitement, but the wish for something to fortify the inner man prevailed, and in the bustle of hasty preparation, the mysterious disappearance of the head steward was for the while forgotten. The same consternation prevailed in Almanor's stables. The horses loudly clamored for their oats, while the undergrooms stood idling and wondering at Naham's absence. But here too the disappearance of the head groom was at length discovered, yet the steeds could wait no longer for their morning meal, and therefore here also affair was for the while forgotten. And therefore here also the affair was while forgotten. So they continued on. Now it was yet early in the morning, and therefore the absence of Abimelech and his friends had not yet been discovered, and as these gentlemen did not belong to the class of early risers, but with advancing day the perplexity increased, Public officials began to inquire about the not performed public labors. Masters made search for their missing slaves, while those who were accustomed to deal with the few free Israelites, most of whom were engaged in traffic with small wares, and loudly expressed their wonder at their non-appearance. In the now well-filled rooms, the jolly Pancratius, all was consternation and excitement. For the 25th time, mine host was relating to a crowd of eager listeners how on the previous night Abimelech and 14 of his friends had been assembled in that very room, and after a good deal of discussion of which he, Pancratius, had not understood anything beyond that all the talk had been about the Jew Nahum and the king's daughter. They had left to arm themselves and to reassemble at a certain public house outside the western gate. How he had seen none of them since, although he had kept his house open all night according to their own wish, and how he therefore feared that they had not returned. So this is the bartender telling the fact that they went to, go murder God's children, and they didn't return. But God. Okay, so every new arrival augmented the consternation, for as yet none had appeared who knew more than the others. Whenever the door opened to admit a newcomer, they all would rush forward, and all at the same time exclaim in eager tones, "What news? Have you seen Abimelech? No. Did you hear anything of young Haman? No. Has Marduk made his appearance? No. Any news at all of any of the missing 15? No." And no, it was throughout the whole catalog. No one had seen or heard of Abimelech or any of his companions, and it passed all comprehension. At length, a young man whose dress and bearing bespoke him, one of the higher class, and who was known by his friends as the Prince, made his appearance, and with the looks and tones full of mystery, informed the assembled throng that just now the flight of Hiram Nahum, the king's daughter Hermon, her maid, the lovely Tamar, and a host of other captive Israelites had been discovered. They have been followed. Wow. He added, by a party of armed troopers, but no clue to their whereabouts has as yet been discovered, save that cottage of the old Jewish gardener. Has been found abandoned and burnt to the ground. But one thing besides our troopers have seen, namely, the footprints of large body of men in a northerly direction, and as it is known that Abimelech and 14 of his friends left the western gate between the 9th and 10th hour last night, it is supposed that they followed the fugitives as some of the friends' footprints in the same direction. Judging by the delicate and fashionable finish of the sandals seem to be made by the former, and if such is the case, we may perhaps soon hear of them. One thing only puzzles everybody. You all know that for some time the northern outskirts of the city have been infested by a large band of robbers, and therefore it is not at all impossible that the fugitives as well as Abimelech's party have fallen in with them, in which case it is probable that all have been slain or captured, but another party of mounted soldiers has been sent in the direction indicated, and whatever may have been the fate of Abimelech and his friends, we shall most likely soon know all about it. The king is nearly frantic at the disappearance of his daughter and has offered a large reward for her recapture. Wherefore, I do not doubt that we shall soon have the fugitives back again, if they have not been already slain, for nothing stimulates officials and hirelings to such exertions as the hope of being well rewarded. Now should Amalek liberate Hermon and bring her safely back, then will he indeed be fortunate. For Shalmaneser solemnly declares that in the event the two shall be united without further delay, and Amalek will surely succeed to the throne. And furthermore, this flight of the Israelites and their ingratitude to the king, who has done so much for them, have turned our ruler's former good will toward them into such deadly hatred that he will readily listen and accept the advice of his son-in-law to sweep the cursed race out of existence. But who comes here? News, my friends. It's Tarek, who was with the second party sent under command of Sennacherib to pursue the fugitives. I'm sorry, y'all. I was trying to keep my hand propped up, but it's not working. My sister said that you can't pause it and see it, so I'm at least gonna try to be still. Anyway. He was sent to pursue the fugitives, and who therefore can give us the desired information. Hail Tarek, well met, ho, Pancrase, a brimming tankard of thy best. The friends had shaken hands, but on his inquiring gaze now encountering that of Tarek, the prince suddenly relaxed his hold, and in startling tones exclaimed, "What in the name of all the gods is the matter? Thou lookest as if thou seen a ghost. Speak, what ails thee?" But Tarek did not speak. He seized the tankard brought by mine host, and at one draught swallowed its contents. Then in a solemn and trembling tone, he said, "Our friends are dead, slain like dogs, while Amalek is cut in twain. The place where the dead bodies were found," he continued, "shows all signs of a conflict, while the footprints in the soft ground indicate that a strong party must have been engaged. But I cannot believe that the fugitive Israelites have done this work. It is a well-known fact that the northern outskirts of the city are infested by a strong band of robbers, and I believe that in pursuing the fugitives, Amalek had fallen in with the desperados. For I cannot for one moment entertain the thought that the unarmed and weak sons of Israel should have been able to overcome and slay a force so well armed and disciplined as our 15 friends undoubtedly were. But the strangest part of the affair is that although the ground consists for miles around of the same soft substance, no traces could be discovered either back from or beyond the scene of action. Again, sorry. And so it was when the 15 men ordered by Mordecai, I'm so sorry, y'all. When the 15 men ordered by Mordecai to remove the dead bodies left their friends to perform their work, and they went as far as they could through the shrubbery, where they were sure that their feet would not leave any traces in the soil, while they moved on with such caution as not to even displace a single twig or bough. And when they had gone far enough in that manner to be certain that the direction whence they had come could not be perceived, they moved upon softer soil. Okay, no, hold on. And this is him describing the strangest part. He said the strangest part of the affair is that although the ground consists of for 4 miles around the same soft substance, no traces could be discovered either back from or beyond the scene of action. Okay, so he's saying that there ain't no trace of whoever, left the bodies there. And he said, and so it was when the 15 men ordered by Mordecai to remove the dead bodies left their friends to perform their work. They went as far as they could through the shrubbery, where they were sure that their feet would not leave any traces in the soil, while they moved on with such caution as not to even displace a single twig or bough. And when they had gone far enough in that manner to be certain that the direction which they had come could not be perceived, they moved out upon the softer soil, where they purposely let their feet sink deep into the ground. And not satisfied with this, each man left as many prints as he possibly could, and they even put the dead on their feet and caused them to leave their traces, which might easily be discovered by any pursuers, until they came to a spot that seemed fit for depositing their burdens. Here they jumped and stamped about for some time. They tussled with each other to make it appear as if a sharp conflict had taken place, and then they left the bodies in such position as to appear as if they had been slain there. After everything had been arranged to their satisfaction, the Israelites threw themselves on their bellies and snake-like moved back to the shrubbery without leaving a single backward footprint. On arriving opposite the western gate, they soon found themselves on the tracks made by Nahum, his companions, and their pursuers, which they succeeded in obliterating so completely that nothing was discovered by the parties sent after them the next day, and as had been seen by various reports. When I had seen all this, Tarek concluded, I stood rooted to the spot and bewildered by the spectacle before me, and not knowing what I was doing, I turned my horse's head and galloped back to the city. But now let us out into the street, for Sennacherib and his soldiers will soon return with the remains of our friends. The narrator had been listening to with breathless anxiety, while everyone in the room seemed spellbound and thunderstruck. But when the report was finished, they all arose and vowed deepest vengeance on the murderers, whoever they might be. They simultaneously rushed unto their feet to add to the din and confusion existing there. All Nineveh was indeed now the scene of the wildest excitement, but in the crowd there were only a few who knew what it was all about, while no one was able to say what was to be done. Oh, that's my hand. Sorry. By this time, Manzar, with a host of other high officers in the realm who had already been informed by Tarek of all that had occurred, had appeared upon the scene. All the soldiers in the city were under arms. Bugles sounded and drums beat to quarter in every direction. Orderlies were seen to fly hither and thither, and gates were closed to guard against any surprise, and in fact the city wore the aspect of a besieged garrison. 1 moment, please. Okay, so the city bugle sounded, orderlies were seen to fly hither and thither, and the gates were closed to guard against any surprise, and in fact the city wore the aspect of a besieged garrison. After a little while, an officer mounted on a fiery coal-black charger was seen to come from a street leading to the northern gate and approach the king's captain. A short consultation ensued. Then Almanzor nodded his head, and surrounded by his staff and followed by his soldiers in battle array, he moved off in the direction whence the messenger had come. When the second party under command of Sennacherib left the city, they went out on the northern gate and were not long in finding the tracks made by the cunning Israelites for the purpose of leading their pursuers astray. On discovering the footprints, the Assyrians uttered an exultant shout and impetuously dashed forward, not doubting that they soon would overtake the fugitives. But they at length reached the spot where the corpses of Amalek and his followers were deposited. Their exultation was soon checked, and horror-stricken they gazed on the scene before him. The sight which presented itself was indeed one to strike an awe in the stoutest heart. 14 corpses, the faces turned up to the sun, were ranged side by side, a deep gash about 3 inches long, and alike in every forehead, the way by which the soul had left its late abode, while the 2 halves of Amalek were placed at the head of the ghastly column. But the shock of the soldiers had felt on first beholding the revolting spectacle soon passed away. That checked them. They were all brave at first, but when they saw those bodies, they calmed all the way down. Okay, so, and terrible were the curses and deep the vows of revenge hurled after the murderers. Then they all set to work to discover the route these had taken after finishing their bloody work, but behold, no traces were found beyond or back from that terrible spot. How had they got away? Had the earth swallowed them, or had they been raised up into the air? It was altogether unaccountable. There must have been some supernatural power at work. Yes, there was no doubt that the murderers must be leagued with God, with either God or the devil, right? Or the devil, right? And thus the terror the Assyrians had felt on beholding the fate of their countrymen returned, and was fearfully augmented until all the soldiers fairly trembled with superstitious fear, and gathering up the remains of their slain friends, they madly hastened back toward their city. Alamazor and his followers had meantime arrived at the gate, which now was thrown open, and strode Sennacherib, followed by his troopers bearing the sad remains of the king's cousin and his companions, which after having been carried through the principal streets of Nineveh were deposited in their families' sculptures. You know, they had burial places, family burial places. So then the soldiers dispersed to tell their tales of terror, and succeeded so well in partaking their own superstitious fears to the rest of their comrades, as well as to their fellow citizens, that all began to tremble with apprehensions of some impending calamity. So they were scared. They took the word back to town and scared their friends and family, who would all have been brave if they had not carried this word back. So then now everybody's like, okay, well, whoever's with them, they're pretty powerful. Okay, so the watches at the several gates were doubled. Some of the inhabitants rushed into their temples to invoke the help of their gods, while not one was to be found that would have been brave enough to leave the city, at least on that day, for fear of some impending doom. And so the efforts of the Israelites to give their flight and the subsequent occurrences, the most mysterious appearance, had produced the desired effect. We now leave Nineveh and its inhabitants to recover at leisure from their terror, while we return to our friends in the subterranean vaults. After the last of the fugitives had retired to rest, and when all was quiet, Mordecai arose again, and not feeling quite secure as long as there remained a possibility of their retreat being discovered, he paced the room in silent sorrow. So Mordecai is up worrying, like, what if they catch us? Okay, so sorry, I'm drinking some limeade that I made, and it's delicious. Okay. Sorry, y'all. Only Nina could be reading and go way up there for no reason. Okay. Now, at last, an idea seemed to strike him, for his pace became more animated, and lighting and a small torch, he proceeded to the often mentioned trapdoor. This he lifted by means of a secreted lever and went up into the cot. Here, all was now bleak and bare, every useful article having been removed on the board of the vessel. The old man went out to the rear of the building, where he gathered a heap of leaves and dry wood. This he placed around the trapdoor in such a manner that on being set on fire and burned, the ashes and cinders must fall on these stone slabs, thus covering all crevices and completely hiding the entrance. Then he set fire to the leaves and returned to the vault, drawing the heavy stone after him. In the dry leaves, the flames soon spread. Higher and higher it rose, steadily, majestically. Now it reached the wooden walls, then the ceiling, up. At last, the devouring element seized on the roof, and anon the entire structure was enveloped in one bright sea of flame, illuminating the country for miles around. Had there been any one awake in Nineveh, the conflagration must have been seen, but the unusual stir and excitement of the day had produced uncommon fatigue, and irresistible drowsiness had closed every eye. And so the flames raged on, unnoticed, uncared for. But the object of Mordecai was gained. The cot fell with a crash, its ruins completely obliterating all traces of any underground habitation. The old man had heard the fall of his late dwelling, and it filled his soul with joy and confidence, so he sank down on his knees to commune with his Maker, Haya, the God of his people. Then he lay down and soon was buried in sleep. Now the sun was high in the heavens when the sleepers awoke, and much refreshed they arose to begin the work before them. But first the maidens were introduced to the assembled Israelites, and great were the rejoicings of all at their safe deliverance thus far. Then Mordecai sank on his knees, followed by everyone present, and raising his aged hands on high, he prayed. He thanked Jehovah for his great goodness and mercy. He invoked the divine blessing on their perilous undertaking, and then he arose and blessed his hearers. And while we're speaking about him praying and how he raised his hands, you have to remember that praying all bowed down. He was still down on his knees, but they've taught us to pray holding our hands together, below. And when I think about it, holding our hands together like right in front of our hearts or whatever, and that might have some significant impact, maybe resulting in our prayers not being heard because you're like blocking that heart gate. But I'm not going to go deep into that. What I'm saying is, now that you know, we were in shackles, supposedly, quote unquote. So when we pray, we didn't have a choice but to be bent all down, or we would just beat down. We'd be on the ground, just laying there, I guess, praying there. But remember to raise your hands to God when you're praying, down on your knees, and he followed by everyone present, and they raised their hands on high and prayed to God. Raise your hands. Y'all hear me out there? Okay. Now, next he took Nahum and Harim by the hand, and presenting them to the multitude, said in a deep, solemn voice, "Children, I thank you for the love shown to me thus far. I thank you for the confidence, the willingness, and the obedience with which you have followed me under all circumstances, with which you have executed all my commands. I need not to repeat to you all. I need not repeat to you that all I have said and done has been for your own good." I'm sorry, y'all. "You have shown that you always have felt this to be so. Fain would I continue to be your guide and commander, but I am getting old and feeble." I knew this was coming. "The weight of 70 years is quite in such responsibility. As a leadership in an undertaking like ours, I have therefore resolved to throw the burden of this responsibility on younger shoulders. In these, my two noble and beloved nephews, you behold two scions of the royal house of Jehu. He on my right, our esteemed friend Nahum, would in all probability have been now our king had we not lost our independence. And only last night, when he slew the cruel enemy of our race at the head of 14 armed men, he showed himself worthy to be our leader. Him do I therefore appoint my successor, and with this kiss I do anoint him your chief. He on my left, our noble son and brother Harim, has in every respect and under all circumstances shown himself the true and devoted friend of his countrymen. And he too proved last night when in company with Nahum and Lamech, he stood like a rock against his fearful odds. He stood like a rock against his fearful odds." Y'all, listen, this sentence right here, this is just giving me a renewing, because I was tired when I started reading and it was wearing me down. This one sentence packs a punch. He said that he stood like a rock against his fearful odds. I know everybody's scared to leave this and talking about living off the land, but you have to stand like a rock, and that's just the bottom line. And that he is to be trusted. He said he stood like a rock against his fearful odds, and that he is to be trusted. Oh, sorry, y'all. I'm so sorry. Okay. Him do I name Nahum's chief assistants, and him also do I thus anoint with the kiss of love. And see, the kiss of love, higher is love. He's a loving father. You have to remember that. Men of Israel, behold your leaders. Love, honor, and obey them. But I too shall remain among you. In all cases, under all circumstances, shall my counsel and advice cheerfully be yours. And though old and feeble, supported by the strong arms of your leaders, I shall accompany you to the promised land. And in the hour of need will my voice be heard for the salvation of Israel. He ceased. The Israelites arose, and one simultaneous shout of exultation burst from every mouth. Nahum and Harim, Harim and Tamar. Cheer upon cheer reverberated through the subterranean vaults and echoed through them back as with 10,000 tongues. Oh, so the echo was just so loud that it surprised even them, I guess. Makes me think about, praising from the mountaintops. But anyway, old Mordecai was not cheered, but with beaming eyes, everyone went up to where he stood. They took his wrinkled hands and carried them to their lips, while tears of love and gratitude rolled down their swarthy cheeks and spoke louder than words the feelings of their bosoms. But at length the tumult was over, and the men went to work. The vessel had received the finishing touches on the day before, and now the last provisions were carried on board, while women set to work to prepare sleeping apartments and the beds of dry leaves and moss. Then the men began to break down the wall that separated them from the river, and at the 6th hour afternoon, all was accomplished except the liberation of the prisoners and the removal of the vessel. As all now were for a time at leisure, Nahum, Hermon, Harim, and Tamar went to old Mordecai and craved his blessing to their union, which of course was cheerfully granted, and preparations were at once made for the celebration of the nuptials. It was a cheering sight to see the two late captives and menials, but now the chosen leaders of a brave and determined people, in the full bloom of manhood, with their beautiful brides, one of whom was the only daughter of a noble king, standing before the old man, who officiated as high priest on the occasion. When the important question was asked, will you take these men for your lawfully wedded husbands? Will you honor and obey them to the end of your days? A loud, fervent, and cheerful yes was answered by the maidens. And according to the beautiful custom of the Israelites, a stout glass was raised on high and then dashed to the floor, where it was shattered in 10,000 splinters, thereby indicating that as the several parts of the glass could not be severed, but by the breaking of the vessel, so the tie that bound the two hearts could not be dissolved until death should destroy it. Let me read that again. He said, they said yes, and according to custom, it was a custom, that a stout glass was raised on high, and then dashed to the floor, where it was shattered in 10,000 splinters, thereby indicating that as the several parts of the glass could not be severed, but by breaking of the vessel, so the tie that bound the two hearts could not be dissolved until death should destroy it. The ceremony over, the young husbands drew their wives to their bosoms and sealed the contract with a fervent kiss. Then the entire party sat down to a frugal banquet, and although the meal consisted of but rough fare and more joyous and happy wedding has seldom been witnessed. At length the hour of midnight drew nigh, and admonished the revelers that the time for their last work in the vault was approaching. They therefore arose, saw that everything was in its place, and Mordecai with 6 men went to liberate the prisoners. They provided themselves with flaming torches, and then went to the first vault, and with their united strength raised the trap door which had led to the outer world, which they left wide open. Then they proceeded to the room of Barak and his 3 men, and after asserting that all 4 were sound asleep, they unlocked the door and hastened back after the first breaking off the iron knob which connected with the spring that had held the stone slab in one of the walls separating the 2 underground apartments. They then carefully and securely put the stone back in the aperture until the click of the spring told them that communication with the chamber in which they and their friends was beyond the power of any human being in the first vault, unless by breaking the wall. They now went on to board their vessel, while all the others were already assembled, thus leaving their late prisoners, the 4 Assyrians, free to find their way back to Nineveh as best they might. By this time, the tide was beginning to come in, and ere another half hour had passed, it was at its height. The rocking of the vessel now indicated that it was afloat, and under the direction of Mordecai, 4 of the stoutest men were put on the benches constructed for that purpose and set to working the oars. Okay, so they were getting in position. The vessel began to move forward. A few strong pulls, and the fugitive Israelites were in the middle of the river Tigris. Oh, y'all! So they got out, and this is inspirational. It should be. They got out. They left. They built a system together, and they carried out a plan, and they got moving. We have to get moving. See, to me, what they call a movement on TV or social media or whoever, when it comes to our people, y'all, if you are not actually in motion, it's not a movement. Like Lex and Drop and let us find the truth. Like everybody's saying, like what I've heard over and over again, listening to these brothers. We have to separate ourselves, and by all means necessary. It wasn't easy for them to leave. They still left. They had to do some stuff they didn't want to do. They still left. Like I said, a movement is not an actual movement until you get into motion. And now they're on their way. The tide was high enough to move the vessel, and, they're getting up out of there. So I say all that to say, y'all, that chapter we just read, which was chapter 7, should be pure encouragement. You should go to Let Us Find the Truth and click on the book in the public library and read this book. It's awesome. And read chapter 7 so you'll have a better understanding. My sister said that you can't freeze it and read along. So just go and read it. It's free. He has information up there for you. And thanks for allowing us to use it for free. Who else is giving you history all on one website for you to just dig into at your own will? That's what teamwork provides. So I'm going to continue in chapter 8 tomorrow. Peace and blessings and love to everyone. And may Haya bless everyone that is standing up and making videos. May he echo your voice. May he lead you in truth to share the truth. So wake up many more people. Like I said, I'm just in that type of mood. Sabbath, y'all, and I won't probably pick up tomorrow because it is the Sabbath. But you all shut it down for the Sabbath. Spend time with your family. Spend time with Haya. It's nothing like it. We've been consistently keeping the Sabbath for about 3 weeks, going on 3 weeks, and I feel a closer bond. So, y'all keep the Sabbath, and I'll pick up at chapter 8 soon. I might read it and just keep it in my phone. Or I may just wait till after the Sabbath. That's when the work is supposed to be done, right? Yeah, I think I will. Y'all enjoy the Sabbath. Peace and blessings. Peace.